Hey everybody, it's Nikki and welcome back to another episode of Furry Reviews. Today we're talking about the Netflix series Aggretsuko seasons 1 through 3. I may do another episode on the TBS shorts, but this one is strictly focused on the Netflix series. The Aggretsuko series on Netflix is owned by Sanrio and is made by the studio Fanworks and written and directed by Rarecho. It's a 2D Flash animated series and it was released April 20th, 2018. The story of Aggetsuko follows a red panda named Retsuko who works as an accountant at a large company and has to deal with the many pitfalls of corporate life. In order to vent her frustration with her bosses, superiors, and co-workers, she goes to a karaoke bar and sings death metal about her daily struggles. The first season centers around her trying to find a way to quit her job. The second season centers around her meeting a mysterious billionaire's tech entrepreneur, Tadano. And the third season finds her unwittingly ending up as a member of an idol group. Aside from the main character, Retsuko, there are a lot of recurring characters in the cast, such as her best friend Sveniko, the fennec fox, and Haida, the hyena, her annoying boss Ton, a pig, the head of the marketing department Gori, the gorilla, and the secretary of the president Washimi, the secretary bird, and many other characters that work within and outside of the office that Retsuko works at. By the way, this review will contain spoilers, just so you know. So I first want to start off with some of my favorite parts from the series, and I have a list of them as always. So the first thing I want to talk about is Sveniko's internet sleuthing. This comes up twice in the show, where she stalks people on social media in order to figure out what they're doing, and as Haida notes, it's very creepy, but it's also very entertaining. There's also the office mixer in season 1 that Tsunoda sets up for Retsuko, Fenneko, and herself. I really liked Manu Maru, and I wish that he'd appeared in more episodes throughout the series. I just thought he was cute, and he's an animal that you don't often see in animation or media in general, so I thought that he was just an interesting little guy. I also liked Haida getting pneumonia not once, but twice in the show under the same circumstances. It was just an added little bit of realism in an otherwise cartoony show that I just thought was cute and funny and a twist on something you see in a lot of these kinds of shows. I also like mostly everything about Fenneko and Haida's relationship. I just think they're cute, but I especially like when they went out drinking after being basically rejected by Retsuko. I just think that their dynamic is really fun. I also like the scene in season 2 where Tadano just takes Retsuko to Hokkaido. That was just a really interesting scene, and it plays into another scene later in the show that I really enjoyed as well. So I just thought that scene was funny and interesting. I also thought that once Gori and Washimi were let in on Retsuko's secret and they were trying to do the metal scream, I just thought that was really cute and very relatable as someone who likes metal but cannot scream to save my life. And then finally, something that really surprised me with season 3 was just the way that the show, while still being a comedy, was really able to ramp up its creepy moments. In the beginning of the show, a lot of them were fake outs, like Retsuko's mom breaking into her apartment, but the genuine creepiness that the show had when depicting her stalker was surprising and really well done, in my opinion. And now we're going to start talking about some of the technical elements of the show, which include the storytelling and writing, the setting, the art style and character design, the performances, and the music in the show. Storytelling and writing. Aggretsuko's storytelling starts off pretty episodic, kind of like the TBS shorts it was based on, and it gradually becomes more serialized. As a comedy, I thought the jokes were pretty funny. It's definitely a different type of humor than most American shows or work coms, but I don't think it was particularly alienating. I know I have some friends who just don't think that they like Japanese humor, but I thought it was pretty universally funny, even if you're not someone who's a fan of Japanese media. I also thought the characterization and the character arcs of this show were really strong. There are some flat or one-note characters, but most of the cast is pretty well developed, particularly from season to season. They have these character arcs that show really interesting growth in the characters. I also think that the decision to make the episode 16 minutes as opposed to 22 minutes was a really smart decision because they didn't have to pad out the runtime any more than necessary, and it didn't drag on with a bunch of filler or even filler episodes, especially as the series went on. When it started off, like I said, it was more episodic, but as it went into season 2 and 3, and even the end of season 1, it it became more arc-based. As far as the season-long story arcs go, I also think they're a really good length. I do wish that in season 1 there had been a few less of the episodic episodes. It really kind of became repetitive by starting off with Retsuko hates her job and wants to quit. And she seemingly finds it out. Like one of the first episodes, her friend Puko is starting a store that she wants to work for, but they all eventually fall through. I like the episodes, but like I said, they are just a bit repetitive, so I wish we could have gotten more development of Retsuko and her friends throughout season 1. But it didn't drag on too long, so. Art style and character design. Since this is a Sanrio property, you know the character designs are going to be pretty good. And while most of the characters in the series have that typical cutesy Sanrio vibe, I did notice that some of the character designs are more angular or darkly colored than a lot of other Sanrio properties, and I think that reflects the more grown-up audience for this show. Now, it's still very kawaii, especially by American adult cartoon standards. I'm just thinking of Big Mouth. But I thought that the tidbit of the art direction was interesting. It might be just to make it more easy to animate in Flash. I don't know, I'm not an animator, so I don't know how all that stuff works, but I think that those two things might have to do with one another. I also like the punniness. I mean, puns are obviously a huge part of Japanese humor, but I really like the punniness of the character's species. Washimi is a secretary who happens to be a secretary bird. Ton is a literal sexist pig. And Anai is a badger who badgers people. Okay, that might not be a pun in Japanese, but you know, I'll take it. They also have a lot of punny names. Feneko is a fennec fox. Gori is the gorilla. And the idols in season 3, Hirarin, Migi, and Manaka are named after the Japanese words for left, right, and center. So I thought that was a fun tidbit. Setting. The setting is nothing to write home about. Most of the action takes place in this kind of generic corporate office. Some of the other locations, like the streets of Tokyo or the traditional Japanese homes where Retsuko meets Shirota, are interesting though. In season 2 and 3, we kind of get to see other parts of Japan, like Hokkaido, or we get to see the kind of underground club where Retsuko and her idol group start performing. So the show does expand on its locations in subsequent seasons, but it's mostly set in an office, so. Performances. I loved the Japanese voice cast for the show. I'm not familiar with the English one since I haven't watched it, but I've heard good things about it. Everyone is well cast and has a suitably cartoony voice based on their character. I'm especially thinking of Tsunoda, Gori, Washimi, and Kabae. Music. Now, I may listen to some metal, but I'm not really a fan of death metal, so I'm not super familiar with it. But I did think the music during Retsuko's rants was funny, and the lyrics were like off the chain. I also like the contrast of other types of music in the show, like with Anai's EDM/rap music when he's cooking at the family and friends festival thing. And there's also Haida's kind of punk rock lecture to Retsuko at the end of season 3. That was pretty interesting, especially because the show has been hinting and showing outright that he's a fan of punk music. It was nice to hear him finally play some. Most of the background music is pretty repetitive and used throughout the series, and it's not repetitive in a bad way. It adds this kind of atmosphere that you kind of feel like you know what's up, you know what's happening, you know where we are. So kind of like with my B&A review, most of the comparisons with other media I found with the show were not actually to other series with anthropomorphic characters, but were actually to live action shows. The obvious comparisons being The Office and to a lesser extent Parks and Recreation. And I feel like there are also some elements of Workaholics. Not many connections, but you know, they're set in an office with crazy people, so. But I think in terms of animation with anthropomorphic animals, the show has kind of a pretty different or unique premise. Well, I guess there's Ugly Americans, which is also kind of set in a work type setting. I don't know. I think, yeah. So my final thoughts on the show are that it's a really cute and interesting look at work life in Japan, which now granted, I'm not part of the American workforce, but it doesn't seem too dissimilar from American work life. And I think it also sheds light on the societal pressures put on people, particularly women, once they reach adulthood. Plus, death metal. I hope you enjoyed this review. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!